Hi, it's Gerd, Leonhard, futurist again with a second session for Future Talks in beautiful Bern. I hope you had a good time yesterday and I gave you some food for thought. Today I'm going into the second session to talk about what I sometimes call the green futures and how that hangs together with education. So let's dive right in. First, as I said yesterday, we are approaching another wave of reality, which is beyond the COVID crisis, which is still keeping us very busy and hopefully will be wrapped up sometime next year. The next real challenge and also opportunity is climate change. And it has been around for a long time, of course, but now we're saying, well, if we made sacrifices and we changed how we do things in the COVID crisis, can we do the same when it's about climate change and global warming? The reality is that COVID-19 is just a test run for climate change. That is in terms of impact, in terms of urgency, but it's just a little bit slower. So we have a hard time understanding what's coming in 40 years. But rest assured, it will all happen in 10 years to a substantial impact of issues, which I'll talk about shortly, if we don't take action now. Again, like I said earlier, we're at a pivot point, at a fork in the road, where we have to take action or result in consequences, for example, as we did in COVID, where we weren't ready, and we weren't ready to make those changes. Here in Switzerland, we're very lucky that we were, to a large degree. Of many other countries like the US and Brazil, yeah, there's a lot of suffering because of this. And the key question when we think about that future of climate change and global warming, this is a scene from San Francisco just 4 weeks ago when there was wildfires all over California, the biggest ones ever. The key question that people keep asking me about the future is this one, what will the future bring? And that is not a good question, because the future isn't fixed. It doesn't just happen and made in Silicon Valley or China or wherever you think, at CERN or wherever, right? The key question for us is, when we think about education and our kids in the future, is what future we want. Because we have a choice, right? We can have scenes like this every week all over the world, or we can do something. And we can be prepared for artificial intelligence, we can be prepared for the end of fossil fuel, and we have to make those choices, and we have to think about what kind of skills and education we need. As I was saying earlier, yesterday, we are in warp drive into the future, and here's 4 things that are happening that are going to require different thinking. First is big tech. Everything is about technology. So technical skills and understanding technology is becoming crucial. We have to teach it our kids, we have to teach it ourselves, and I think this is not about programming, it's about understanding what technology does and what the options are. Big health, clearly everything is about healthcare, wellness, well-being, food. That is exploding, and trillions of euros are going to shift in that direction in public funding. We have big state. The state is mingling with everything. And that's sometimes good, as it is here in Switzerland for the most part, and sometimes not so good, as it is in Brazil and other countries who are more hard hit. But of course, most people don't like big states, so this may be a little bit temporary. But here's the biggest one, big green. Because now we're saying, you know what? COVID was an emergency, and now the next wave is global change, climate change and global warming and energy and sustainability. That is the big area that we need to focus on, not just because we must focus on it, also because it's a new economy. I think the World Economic Forum has said 395 million new jobs if we invest in nature. An interesting point of view, I think, that we need to look at and say, well, going back to what I said yesterday about Buckminster Fuller, the future is a choice between utopia and oblivion. We can make that choice now. The next 10 years will be that choice, and our kids will have to live with that choice. And as we're seeing right now, this is essentially a pivoting moment where we look at everything like inequality, right? Where we look at economic systems, and we look at climate change, and of course COVID and pandemics. And we need to turn the world around. We need to act. We need to come up with new rules, norms, social contracts, solidarity. This is a time of reset. And the skills we need from us, from our kids, from our employees, from people with us, right? They are about imagination. They're about storytelling, about negotiation. They're all ephemeral skills, right? And character traits. Einstein once said imagination is more important than knowledge. I think they're still very much about knowledge, but imagination is what we need to create that future. And on that note, I think really what's happening is, it's totally clear right now, is that Sustainability is no longer about just a nice to have or afterthought after we have dinner, steak dinner. It's not an ideology, it's not altruism, it's the business plan for humanity. It is the way that we're going to go forward in the future and say, well, this is how we can survive and prosper. And this is what's happening right now. So education in that area is going to be crucial. If you're looking at just the numbers, of course, this does not make for a very good dinner conversation, whether it's the economies or CO2 emissions or the climate map of the future with 300 million climate refugees coming to Europe, including Switzerland. Right? So it's something that we must act on. I think it's totally clear we are in a future where that is becoming crucial for us to understand. The circular economy, again, been much talked about for a long time, but I think in 2030, the only economy there is will be a circular economy. That is the only thing that we're going to have, because that's the only thing that will be useful for us without destroying what we like, right? And the unthinkable will become the new normal, including carbon tax on airplanes, carbon tax on meats, carbon tax on, of course, taking a regular car, and feeding that back in the system, cutting out the fossil fuel subsidies. That's all on the agenda. And what do we have to learn for this? Well, we have to learn a lot of negotiation, a lot of interpersonal skills, a lot of emotional intelligence, a lot of things that are coming together. So we're going through this window in this future. I mean, we're clearly going into a new time, and thus we need a new agenda for education. Yes, science, technology, of course, we have to understand, but in the end, right, these are human-only skills. Intuition, foresight, creativity, design, understanding, communication, development. These are all things that computers can maybe simulate eventually, but the hacky skills, the ethics, creativity, those are skills that we're going to see as human-only skills. And as Klaus Schwab keeps saying, this time right now, the pandemic creates a rare and narrow opportunity to reimagine what we want from the world and to reimagine education. Again, what world will we leave to our kids, and how they're going to be equipped to deal with this world? Because, in 10 years, 9 billion people on the internet, half of the jobs will be virtual or in the cloud. So clearly, this is a key development that's happening. I think we're moving away from the fossil fuel economy. That's roughly, 10 million people work in the fossil fuel economy. Now we're moving away from that into the renewable fuel economy, and I think this is really quite a huge shift in every possible way. I call this the people, planet, purpose, prosperity economy, or the green economy, the sustainable economy, and that is a huge opportunity, especially for Switzerland, especially for international organizations, because it's a business model that is sustainable and that should lead to a good scenario in the future, and many, many new jobs, from research to design to everything else in this new food chain, replacing the old food chain of fossil fuel and fossil fuel subsidies. That is going to be a very big deal, especially for those millennials that I'm showing you here, because the share of population is going to increase. Right now we're still sort of around this, the Generation X and the baby boomers, they're still making a good chunk, but right now it's already exploding. So roughly around now it's already at 41% or so, but basically the future is going to be owned by the Gen X and the Gen Zs. The kids are now between 12 and 35. That's going to be an entirely different scenario. We have to help them to understand this future, because clearly they are going to be the ones in control of business and governments, and as we see around the world, also taken over governments. Like in New Zealand, we have, of course, Jacinda Ardern isn't quite a millennial, but a lot closer than I am to this, and they're going to have to juggle this 2030 landscape: big tech, big health, big state. Right? And here's what they really have to juggle: that is the big green. That is the most fundamental thing that we need to look at. And this is, again, it's not just because we have to, but because we have an opportunity there to do a reset in the next 10 years. After that, I think we will get to the place where we wish we would have done a reset. So, global paradigm shifts all over the place. That's what we can expect in the next 10 years. Decisive action on climate change. It will be painful, it will hurt, but it will also create lots of new work. It will shift the money from oil and gas and weapons and whatever we currently are investing in. Not Aramco, but Griamco, so to speak. Right? Decisive action on climate change, that is coming. A renewed focus on healthcare and social and education. Also many, many new jobs in alternative medicine, personalized, customized medicine, and education, of course, as the key component of dealing with that new future challenge. A rise of diverse young and female leaders, and we have already seen that the female leaders of the world have fared much better in the COVID crisis. Taiwan, New Zealand, Switzerland, Sweden, Iceland, and of course Germany. And we're going to see a lot more of that, and we will see populism die because the performance has been absolutely miserable, as evidenced in the US. But more technology everywhere, right? And basically technology is going to run everything because it's becoming smart and cheap and powerful, but we're also going to see more techlash. People are going to say, well, we want technology to be controlled. So look for technology regulation in the next couple of years. We may see less globalization because of the supply chain issues that every company is looking at, but we're going to see also more global collaboration because only with multilateralism can we actually solve the large problems like security, safety, water, food, disease, and so on. Right? So in a nutshell, this is where we're going also in the context of the green future and the green deals that are happening around the world. Skills on two levels, and the STEM levels and the HECI levels, and they're going to be much more on par, much more than they have been so far. I think we're going to see a return to humanistic education also at many colleges and schools, including, of course, art and design and sports and music and ethics and philosophy. Because that is what machines can't do. Right? We're going to do what machines can't do, and we're going to really change the way that we look at this. EQ and IQ, right? In the world's fight against coronas, female leaders show the way. That was from April this year, and it's still true. Let me give you a short quote from my favorite person, the quote from Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand.
If I could distill it down into one concept that we are pursuing in New Zealand, it is simple, and it is this: kindness.
Yeah, I imagine as a principle of government, kindness. Right? That sounds like EQ, doesn't it? I think we're going to need a lot more of that. And how do we create this? Well, we have to create the environment for it. We have to create the openness for it, the possibility for it. So that wraps up the second take on the green future and education. Going a little bit closer. Tomorrow I'll go on a little bit longer on the remaining topics of artificial intelligence, the future of work, and other such minor topics. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you're having a good time at the event, and I'll see you tomorrow.